So today we're going to be talking about post-workout nutrition. It's a very popular subject. It can be a very interesting subject. There's a lot of stuff out there that people don't know about, little bits and bobs. It's obviously a time where a lot of people enjoy their food. There's a lot of beliefs about different methods and so on. So today I'm going to talk to you about what I do, what I've learned. This is all quite basic stuff, but I think for people watching this, you should learn some things or still see things and explain things to people, and it's just little tricks and so on. So I've got the whiteboard out. I'm going to go through, first of all, I'm going to go through some of the important things that go over the whole sort of post-workout nutrition, and then I'm going to go into the protein, the fats, and then we're going to finish it up on the carbs and just some things that you can think about. So like I said, I've got the whiteboard out. First of all, not sure if you can see up there. I'll just show you. So a few questions we're going to ask. Important things. Timing. Everyone talks about the anabolic window and everyone thinks they need to chuck a protein shake down their neck within 10 minutes. What have you eaten that day? What did you eat before the gym? And that's something we'll go over in a second. So a lot of people think that you need to finish the gym and straight away get to the counter and get a protein shake down your neck, or that sort of thing. Within 30 minutes or an hour, you've got to eat some protein and some food because it's going to have this magical effect. That there is some slight correctness to that. What you need to eat post-workout, there is no perfect thing to eat and there is no perfect time. It all, as with a lot of things with nutrition, it depends. It depends on your current goals. A lot of it also depends on what you've eaten that day and what you've eaten beforehand. So let's just say you've got a good setup already, and just before you've walked into the gym, an hour before, you've had your pre-workout meal, which consisted of some protein, some carbs, some fats, just a normal balanced meal. So that would mean there's no huge rush to get a meal in you straight away. As long as you eat within about 2 hours of training, that's still in an optimal sort of time range. When you eat protein, it stimulates MPS, so it starts the whole recovery process. You don't want to really go over about a 2 hour period after you've trained, because that will start to hinder your recovery a little bit. So as long as you've had a nice pre-workout meal and had some protein, basically, that's the important thing before you train, then there's no mad rush to have some protein afterwards. If you wake up, for instance, and train fasted, then it is very important to get protein in within more like an hour of training. In a perfect world, once you've finished training, your body is basically all over the shop. So your blood is rushing around your muscles, all your senses. You'll notice you'll still probably be in the car home, you might be shaking. So it's good to wait about 20-30 minutes, probably more like 30 minutes after you've finished before you actually eat. So your body can focus on the digestion of the food and doing what it's supposed to do instead of focusing on the stress that you've just put on it from the gym workout. So with the timing, so just to go over this little section before we move on, timing, it all depends. It depends on your day. If you're training in the morning and you haven't eaten, then you need to get your protein in within 30 minutes or an hour. If you've eaten beforehand, had some protein before you've trained, or you've had some amino acids while you've trained, then there's no mad rush to get some protein in, as long as it's within a couple of hours is ideal. And again, it's good to wait about 30 minutes to let your body relax before you eat. Right, so now we're going to move on to protein. This is something that I think can actually have some benefits, some small time benefits. So on here, you'll see I've wrote good quality, low fat, fat slows down digestion, protein turns on MPS, and down the bottom, vegetables. So what we want is a really good quality protein. Protein is our main macronutrient, our building blocks. So always aim for a good quality protein source, either a really good quality whey protein, good quality chicken breast, something good, good quality fish, anything like that is perfectly fine and ideal. I always use a whey protein supplement after I've trained. Low fat, this is something that some people are a little bit... The thing is, as you can see below, fat slows down digestion. So if you're... Yeah, so that's pretty much it. If you have a really fatty steak after training, you want the protein to get into your system and your carbohydrates to get into your system as quick as possible to get everything. But when you consume fat, that slows down the digestion of everything. And fats can take hours and hours. So fat slow down digestion. Try and keep fat as minimal as possible. That's why you'll see a lot of people having a whey protein shake and cereal, things like that, because cereal, all these carbohydrates are very low in fat. Down the bottom, it also says vegetables. I never really put vegetables in my post-workout meal. Again, quite a lot of the time, especially when you're trying to grow, food obviously gets quite high. And the post-workout window is where people will eat a lot of food. So if you're pushing in vegetables as well, because of the fibre content, they can get you a little bit more gassy, a little bit more bloated, and you'll struggle to eat a large amount of food, carbohydrates, protein, all that stuff. So in that window, it's best to leave vegetables out and get them in different meals of the day. You don't have to have vegetables with every single meal. As long as you're having 1 to 3 servings per day, then you're perfectly fine. Okay, so just to finish off on this section, just a reminders, good quality protein, always aim for good quality protein. Keep all the food low fat, so you want a low fat protein, you want carbohydrates which are quite low in fat. Fat slows down digestion. Protein turns on MPS, which is muscle protein synthesis, which is the recovery. And again, vegetables, try and keep those out of your post-workout meal. Don't get me wrong, with all of these things, if they're only happening once or twice a week, then that's perfectly fine and there's no big deal. Don't be sitting there and someone's cooked your meal and be like, oh my God, I can't have vegetables, because that's just daft. But on your day-to-day and your optimal, this is when you want to be trying to follow this sort of thing. So moving on to the final section, I want to talk about carbohydrates. This is where the fun bit comes in, and where quite a lot of the time, bodybuilders, people following strict diets, this is where they can start enjoying their thing, enjoying stuff, and having a little bit of food that they feel isn't the normal typical bodybuilder foods, even though because of how popular things are, it's all just typical bodybuilder foods now anyway. As you can see up here, I've just put carbs in the bracket. Replenishing glycogen, because a lot of people talk about you have to have the carbohydrates to replenish glycogen. Good and bad carbs post-workout, this workout window, and spiking insulin. So replenishing glycogen, we don't have carbohydrates after, with bodybuilding, we're not necessarily having carbohydrates to replenish glycogen. A lot of people say that, but that isn't necessarily it. The only time it's important to replenish your glycogen when you're training in the gym, really, is when you're training 2 times per day. Some people do train 2 times a day, bodybuilders. They'll train in the morning and then again at night. It is important to have a big carbohydrate meal after you're training, if you are training later on in the day. Because of that, you'll want to fill yourself back up with glycogen. But if you are just like normal, train in the evening or whatever, and then train again the next day, then it's perfectly fine, because by the time you've had a few more meals, your glycogen stores and everything will be filled back to normal. Next, we move on to good and bad carbs. This is where a lot of people, you'll see, everyone's on cereal. I myself like to have cereal, jams, bagels, lots of low-fat carbohydrates, anything goes really. But this isn't because there's any magic to them. Like, there's no difference between having a big bowl of Cocoa Pops than there is having a big bowl of rice or a big bowl of potatoes. The only real difference is when bodybuilders are growing and they're in their off season, food can get really high. People can get to the point where they're consuming 500, 600, 700 grams of carbohydrates, and people do like to put a large amount of that in their post-workout window to have it around their training window. they feel that the carbohydrates get utilised a lot more around the training window. So if you're having, let's just say for example, in your post-workout meal, you're having 200 grams of carbohydrates. If you're trying to eat 200 grams of carbohydrates just from rice or from potato, you'd have a mountain of potato. And for one, you'd struggle to eat it. For two, it wouldn't be very enjoyable. For three, you'd have so much food in your gut. Digestion would then be hindered. All sorts of different things. There's nothing wrong with this, as long as obviously digestion isn't getting like in the way or anything. But that's why people will go to more like cereal, bagels, jams, sorbet, all sorts of different things, as long as it's carbohydrates and low in fat. That's sort of anything goes. So good or bad carbs, in that window, it doesn't really matter. It's just about getting some carbohydrates in post-training to start helping recovery. And like I say, if there is a perfect timing of day to eat a load of carbohydrates, then it is around your training window. Because if you're sat in the office, you don't want to be smashing down 200 grams of carbohydrates because you just sat in a chair all day. So if you're going to be consuming a lot of food, put it around by your workout perimeter. Again, we've got the workout window. So this again is basically what I've just spoke about. If you're having 4,000 calories, you don't want to be eating 3,000 of them first thing in the morning when you're in bed or you're in the office chair. It's good to aim quite a good chunk of food around by your workout window. Your food will get utilised a lot more. There's quite a lot of like scientific studies that say that this isn't all that important, and putting loads of carbs after your training isn't all that important. This is a little bit more of one of those, from experience, myself and a lot of bodybuilders, they know from good experience and years of doing this that you can get away with eating a lot more food post-workout in that window than, let's just say, if you were trying to eat the exact same amount of food and you were sat on the sofa doing nothing. And then again, down at the bottom we've got spiking insulin. Carbohydrates aren't necessarily needed to spike insulin. Protein can actually spike insulin by itself in the same, with the right dose, with the right amount. So when people talk about spiking insulin, the carbohydrates post-workout aren't necessarily for that, because it's shown in certain studies that it doesn't actually have a huge effect on top of the protein you're already having, because your body's so primed after a workout to for MPS to be turned on and everything. Then just taking in additional carbohydrates doesn't have much of an effect, but the carbohydrates then come in to help with the recovery and the good opportunity to get a lot of food in. Carbohydrates after training, obviously stress hormones are high, so cortisol. Carbohydrates actually basically turn off cortisol, and protein does the opposite, which turns on the muscle protein synthesis. So the carbohydrates are stopping the breakdown and the protein is doing the opposite. So just to go over the last few things, you want to eat within about 2 hours of finishing training. Don't worry about it being within 30 minutes, but within 2 hours of training is perfectly fine, as long as you had some protein before. 2, you want really good quality protein. 3, you want low fat carbohydrates and low fat protein to help speed up the digestion, get it all through, get the food utilised in your body. If you are in off season and you're trying to eat a lot of food, then focus a lot of your food around by your workout perimeter. And 5, the most important thing really is making sure your whole day is correct, because if you're eating like crap in the day, or not having your protein servings throughout the day, or getting your vegetables in, or so on and so forth, then don't expect just to have this perfect post-workout window and it's going to solve everything, because it isn't. The most important thing is your whole day. I hope that's helped. I hope you've learned something from this. I'm going to be doing a few more of these videos like I've said. This one, obviously, post-workout nutrition. We're leading up to Christmas now, and I did a few posts on my Instagram and my social media. If you followed me, talking about me taking on some more clients on TM Nutrition. I'm taking names and blocking out spaces for starters that want to get started in January. So if you do, please get in touch, get onto my website or my Instagram, drop me a message. The links are below in the video. Also, if you do want any low-fat protein or protein powders that you want good quality, you can go onto Reflex Nutrition, and I advise to get the Instant Whey Pro. I'll put my discount code up on the screen, which you can use. And apart from that, guys, thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I hope you've learned something and maybe took away a few little tips, even if it's just things like trying to keep fats out of post-workout and stuff. All these little things can help, especially over a long term. 1 year, 2 years of doing these little things, that's when they add up and you start making some gains. Cool, thank you.